women raise at Wharton, women raise like 13% of all venture money that goes to Wharton founders. It's not 50-50. The school is now majority female. It's something like 55-45 women, men. But women are still not raising their fair share of venture capital. And that made me so mad because it was like, we've controlled for that variable. We've controlled for education. We've controlled for like pedigree. And even when we do that, the women can't raise the same amount of money. And so we started the Wharton Alumni Founders and Funders Association that connects Wharton female founders with Wharton female funders, because Wharton turns out a lot of investors. So why can't Wharton women invest in other Wharton women? And so now that organization, I'm still on the board, is now 5,000 members strong, and one of the most active Wharton alumni clubs. And I'm very proud for all the support and networking, education, and community we can provide to both Wharton founders and funders, because being a female investor is not easy either. It's not like the funders are having a great easy go of it. There are very few women who are general partners in venture capital firms. Those are the ones who actually decide to write the checks, and they need our support as well.
Welcome to Women at Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of MomSub, the childcare app that connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. And today, our guest is doing that for other women as well, just as we do at MomSub, providing flexible work that empowers women by giving them control over their schedule. Jarah Euston is the co-founder and CEO of WorkWhile, an innovative labor marketplace that's connecting companies and hourly workers, and it raised $23 million from investors last year. Wow, Jarah, congrats to you. As a fellow female tech startup founder, I know how very rare that is, and I'm honored you're joining us on Women at Work, and thank you for being here.
Well, Diane, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And Jarah, I see that you started your first business 21 years ago and sold it to a big media chain. Then you worked in corporate, started two more businesses in the tech space, which we know tends to be dominated by men and fraught with some landmines for women who are still fighting in 2026 for respect and funds from venture capitalists, right? So I want to hear how you overcame all that. But first, we always ask every guest in the beginning what you think has been the biggest challenge in your entire career, specifically because you are a woman.
Oh, man, that is a doozy. That is quite the question. I mean, it's really hard to know, right? I've never not been a woman, so I have nothing to compare it to. So, if I had to pinpoint something, I actually think it's our own internal monologues. And I don't think we are necessarily responsible for them. We can become responsible for them. We can take ownership of our internal monologues, but we live in the world, and the world's pretty misogynistic, and the world is pretty much not women first. It's always men first. Men are the default setting. Men are the first thing that people think about. And so in order to have an internal monologue or an internal perspective that is contrary to that is a big deal and takes a lot of effort. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is mentally not accepting the default setting. And it takes a lot of effort and work and perseverance to not do that, because it's the default is the easiest by a lot. Right? Like, our brains are wired to they're very efficient. They're wired to do as little work as possible. And that's good most of the time, but not if you're trying to think differently or be different than what your culture suggests. I think that's the biggest challenge to overcome.
Wow. And be who you are. And that's interesting that you talk about that default setting because I spent 15 years as a television reporter. And when I would look up sometimes stock footage because I needed to show a boardroom or a CEO, and you do the searches, of course, it pulls up a man in a suit, a room full of men sitting at a table. And I would put these things in my stories until I said, whoa, wait a minute one day. What the
Yeah.
heck am I doing? I'm promoting this idea that everyone else just automatically defaults to a man. And so I had to take the extra effort to look and search for a table with men and women and people of color, so that I could show the real world as it exists because those boards are no longer just men. There are women there, but our brains, like you said, keep going back to that. And it's very interesting when you said, I've always been a woman, so I don't really know, what it's like, but you're surrounded by men in this tech world and you have men co-founders. And I want to know, with all the success you've had in raising capital, and we know that is so hard for women-led companies, has it been an advantage to have a male co-founder to whatever, get the check signed, to get in the room, to get taken seriously?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And yeah, I think, the latest numbers are something only like 5% of female founded startups go on to raise a Series B. So it is rare. And it is a big deal. And I do think having male co-founders can help. But from my perspective, it's really about having male sponsors that can help. So I don't think that it's true that just because you're a man, people who throw money at you. I mean, if you're a 6'3" white guy with blonde eyes, it's definitely easier to raise money if you have the same business plan, track record, idea. That I have no question about. But I don't think it's true that just because you're a man that opens doors. It's hard for men too. It's hard to raise venture capital, and it should be. Um, but I think the bigger thing is what is very helpful is having men in the position of power who have your back. Male sponsors can open a lot of doors, and I'm saying sponsors, not mentors, very intentionally. Having male sponsors can connect you to the right people, can candidly vouch for you. Because a lot of times, if you're a woman, you're not pattern matching. But if you have a male sponsor who is pattern matching, and that person is willing to go to bat for you and willing to say, like, okay, maybe she doesn't match the typical pattern, but I vouch for her, that goes a long way.
hmm So describe for me where you have found these male sponsors, what they do, what function they perform, and not just function, what place they have in your life. And I know what you mean in the general sense, but I want to hear some specifics. How has that happened for you in your life? Who have these people been? Have they been your friends from college? Have they been a spouse's friend? Have they been a colleague? How did that develop? And did you have formal conversations? How did it evolve that these men were your sponsors and they gave you legitimacy that you might not have gotten on your own, or it would have taken a lot longer of a climb?
Yeah, I mean, I think the natural place that you will meet a sponsor is in the workplace, someone more senior than you, right? A manager, maybe someone who's not a direct manager, but someone who is more senior on a different team, who you worked with and you've proven your value, and they know that you can perform great work. That's the most natural place to look for a sponsor. And the reason why I use the word sponsor is a sponsor can, let's be candid, get you paid. Somebody who is a sponsor is going to fight for you in that calibration meeting, in the promotion meeting, who's going to vouch for your aptitude, for your performance, for the results that you've delivered. I found sponsors can also be investors. So, right, if I raise money from someone, and they're really happy with the company's performance and they get to know me in that capacity, they're going to introduce me to other male investors and say, "This is a great company. I'm in it. Join the party. It's great." that's how deals get done. And so it's really about finding those people, and women can be great sponsors too. Like it doesn't have to be men, but there just are more men in positions of power, and there are more men with money than women with money. These are just the facts. So a lot of times you need those male sponsors because they're the ones who can open the right doors for you. And it's really about always doing your best work, right? And finding the people that you jive with. So much is personal, right? Like you could be like A plus superstar, but if you don't have a fun time chatting at lunch, that's probably not the sponsor for you.
And you're in this world in Northern California, right? And have been your whole life? Is that where you grew up?
I'm originally from Fresno, California, which is 3 hours south of San Francisco. And
You're Fresno famous, Jarah.
I mean, founders have some things in common. Founders typically have a chip on their shoulder. And if you grew up in Fresno, you definitely have a chip on your shoulder. And they also have a lot of irrational hubris because they think they can disrupt old industries and they know better than, the tens of thousands of people currently in those industries, and they want to blow it up and do something new. And that's an absurd thing to think, right? Right? Like if you think that you're 20 something and you're going to blow up a old school industry with 100-year history worth billions of dollars, you got to have a lot of irrational confidence. But that's what makes a founder. And so, yeah, I'm originally from Fresno in the Central Valley. It's the largest agricultural producing county in the United States. If you eat an almond or a raisin, it was probably grown there. And my frame of reference growing up was you were either, a farmer, a doctor, lawyer, teacher, police officer, or like worked for the government, or you worked an hourly job. These were your options when I was growing up in Fresno. There's not a whole lot of other industry. When I was growing up, I didn't know a software engineer. I didn't know a product manager. I didn't know that venture capital was a thing. Had no clue about any of that. And grew up in a place that I felt like never got a lot of respect. It's not on the coast, it's inland, it's agricultural. And really spent a lot of my early 20s trying to build something that was going to improve the quality of life. And so you mentioned Fresno Famous, which was my first startup. We built a network of hyper-local user-generated content websites in the 2000s. And this is just when like citizen journalism, citizen media was becoming a big thing. And we ended up selling the business to McClatchy, which at the time was the third largest newspaper publisher in the United States. RIP McClatchy. They've since gone bankrupt. And it was a really interesting journey because the motivation for starting that business was really to improve the quality of life in Fresno. I thought that the problem with Fresno was there was so much cool stuff happening, and it's a very diverse place, but there wasn't much spotlight on it. Nobody knew that. And so I thought, wow, if we just had like a website that highlighted all the cool things in Fresno, that would solve the problem. That's all Fresno needed was like a website talking about how cool it was, and then everything else would just fall into place. And that's the kind of like irrational naivete hubris that I think young founders have. And it was a really good time, and I think it had a real impact at the time in terms of like connecting the community. And this was really very Web 2.0 time period, where it's for the first time you could write to the internet. You weren't just reading the internet. And that really started me on this path around entrepreneurship. My first job out of college was as a bond trader on Wall Street. And so, I went to business school
That's far
undergrad.
from Fresno.
It's very far from Fresno. And so I really love markets. I love finance. I've always been attracted to industries that are more male dominated. And I was on the desk, and in those formative first job out of college experiences, being on a bond trading desk is a way to get smart really quickly. And I was thinking about it recently that in my training class, my analyst training class, we went to a strip club as like a corporate event. That's what we did. And like that was normal. Like I don't think that happens anymore, thankfully. But like that's just kind of like the time that I grew up in, and that was my first job out of undergrad. And so, the idea that we have new college grads here at my company now, WorkWhile, and they have a much different onboarding experience. I'm really happy about.
There's an episode in the Uber mini series that tells the whole trajectory of that company that is exactly that. They're
Mm.
taking, the team to a strip club, and Travis kind of stays behind with his significant other who doesn't really want to be there, and I think his PR person who's also talking to him about what are you doing here. So yeah, it's taken a while, for those things to evolve, as we might say. And I want to know how you evolved over your career. So you had this dip into entrepreneurship when you were young. You worked in the different corporate places, and then you decided to start your own company. What about your personal life? What was going on at that time, say, when you first got involved with Nexla? Did you have a significant other? Were you considering family at any point in your future?
Yeah. So, I think for my first startup, I was before I was married, I didn't have any kids. And then when I decided to join a friend at Nuxla, I was married. I had a toddler at the time. And he was married too, and he also had kids. And so we were in a different phase of life. And I think it's helpful to have a co-founder who's kind of in your similar situation because you understand the rhythms of life. And so if you both have young kids, you both know what the deal is, you can support each other. And I think it would be really hard to be a founder with a family, and have a co-founder who's young and single and on the town. I just don't think that would be a great fit. And so I've been fortunate to work with folks who were maybe if not in the exact same phase of life, at least, married and trying, or, definitely want to have kids, because then they're more understanding. They know what the deal is. They understand that you need to pop out for that doctor's appointment, or, you hear a little voice in the background that you need to attend to. It's just a much more welcoming and functional environment to work with people who understand where you're at.
That's great. And I wonder if you feel that despite having that connection and those things in common, that there's still a gap. I call it like the mom guilt gap. You don't hear people talking about dad guilt. And so I wonder, did you have some of the mom guilt? You seem like you're that A-type driven, personality in your career. You're going all in. And then probably at home, you're trying to go all in too, right? That's when women get in trouble. We're like, we're going to be the top-notch mom. We're going to be the top-notch career woman. And we're going to have our house looking like it's on Pinterest, and something gives way, right?
Yeah, it's definitely the house.
Yeah.
That's
That
not
happened to me
like
too.
like it's on Pinterest. That is not that is below my line, as they might say, and not my number one priority. Look, I'm very lucky, and I feel very blessed that I have an amazing supportive husband. And I was a founder before I met him, and I was very clear that I'm going to be a founder in the future. Like that's just who I am. And I think that we built a supportive family life for each other's career. He has a big job too. And so we try to support each other. And I wouldn't have married someone who didn't want that for me. Like, I can't imagine how I would have ended up with someone who didn't think that it was going to be a 50-50 partnership. That just wouldn't have worked out. And so I am internally grateful to, my life partner, for being there for me and for having the same goals and supporting me when I'm working the 80 hours a week. And I try to do the same when he has to. And sometimes there are weeks where we're both screwed, and that's really, really hard,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
that's where it's like, there's no two ways about it. You have to hire help.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to have support, and you have to pay for it. If you aren't fortunate enough to have, that family around. And even if you do have family around, sometimes you still need extra help. And so, the two of us working more than full time, we're both workaholics. I think that's why we get along. And we understand each other in that way. But we do have, a collection of helpers that we call on to help us do what we do. And so, it's not just us, it's an ecosystem.
You've got a village. And I've seen many women post that it is okay to pay for your village. Don't feel guilty about that, you know?
Why would you ever feel guilty? You should feel
Oh,
really proud about that.
yes. Yes, because you can do all these great things and then spend that quality time with the kids when you're not distracted by cleaning or trying to coordinate this or that that somebody else can do for you. So I want to know when things first started to change in terms of your personal life because a child came along, obviously you're carrying that child. There's only so much help a man can provide, right? There's still a lot of talk on LinkedIn about, women end up being the default parent. And so did you ever feel that way as much as you had this give and take in this 50% that, or did you feel like I want to be the default parent when it comes to going to the doctor's appointments or when it comes to school pickup or whatever it was?
Yeah. We have two kids, two daughters, and I think there has been different seasons and at different times, depending on, different functions in terms of who's busy at work or who needs to focus on other things. We take turns on who is responsible for what, right? Like we're in a season where I'm doing drop off and pickup right now. And that isn't always the case, right? So I really think of it in terms of waves or seasons, and it's not set in stone. And if he's got a big deal that kicks off next week, like I'm going to be the one on the hook for everything. And that's okay because, in a 2 quarters, I'm going to have a big deal, right? Whatever is happening, right? And I think that we have to communicate and we have to work on that over time. But look, from my perspective, I love my job. I love work. And I'm proud of that. I think we're instilling a extremely strong work ethic in our kids, and we both value that. I think it would be really hard if we didn't have the same values, although I don't know why I would marry someone who didn't share my values. And it's gonna change depending on what's happening any given month.
Hmm. And do you have family around? Tell me how you built that village. You make it sound, not that you're making it sound easy, but it's usually not easy. What did you have to go through? What things did you have to even maybe you never occurred to you like, wait, I should get someone to help me with this or that. Tell us about how you pieced together your village because you got a lot, you got it all together from the perspective of other women looking in. So how did you get
I,
there?
it's hard. It is not easy, right? Like it is not easy at all. And, we are two type A's and we do a lot of stuff that's not glamorous or fun, candidly, right? Like on Sunday, I really enjoy syncing our calendars. Like, what is happening next week?
Mm.
And like, it just makes me feel better because I know exactly what I'm on the hook for and I know what he's covering. And it makes my week smoother because I've got all my personal commitments in the calendar and I'm going to tick them off. In terms of like how we, built our village, it was really a lot of like, support from other parents of like, I need a sitter. I need a night nurse. I need this. I need this sitter who can only do afternoons. Finding a 20-hour a week sitter in San Francisco is really hard. And so it's all of the parent WhatsApp group, the preschool WhatsApp group, the college friends, the business school friends. It's like word of mouth. of trying to build the people that you trust. And it's not always easy because they have lives too, and things change, and people cancel at the last minute. And you're running around like a crazy person trying to get the kids to school or to that class. And it's really hard. And, I think you can't be shy about asking for help or looking for the team that you need. My biggest life hack has been hiring a cook to
Mm,
come cook for us. And this is not like a personal chef situation. This is a meal prep situation, right? Where we have someone who we met through a babysitter, who comes twice a week for a couple hours and makes basically two family dinners a time. And we put it in the fridge, and at 6 o'clock we heat it up. That has like been a game changer for my life. Right.
wow.
Because I don't have to worry about what are we going to eat, and is it DoorDash, and is it unhealthy, and is it a frozen pizza? It's like, no, a healthy meal that I thought about ahead of time is waiting for me in the fridge, and all we have to do is heat it up a little bit, and we're all going to be fine. Uh,
Beautiful.
that simple thing is such like an unlock. And it was a real game changer for us, because I don't like cooking. There are some things that I'm not good at. I'm not a great cook. Like, I'm very slow. I have to look at the recipe 3 times. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm really bad at cleaning. I'm really bad at it. I don't like it. I don't care about it. A little bit of mess does not bother me. So like that is something I should absolutely outsource. Like I would spend the whole day and the house would be 10% as clean, right? Like I'm just bad at it. So these are things that I can afford, thankfully, to outsource to people who do them much better than me.
Hmm. And so I want to know how old your girls are. It sounds like they're in school, and what you did for childcare in the very beginning. Did you just default to daycare, or did you have a nanny? What did you decide this is the way we're going to go, and did that change over the years?
Yeah, so I have a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Oh, big difference.
And so we've done all the things. We did it all. So, for my 5-year-olds, I had her a year after I started WorkWhile. So we had raised at that point our seed round of VC money. We raised $3.5 million. We were maybe, I don't know, less than 10 people at that time. And when I got pregnant with our youngest, I was like, I'm very excited about this, but I'm also very excited about the company, and we're in the grind mode, right? We're a year-old company. There's you know,
No rest.
no rest. There's no taking the foot off the gas. And so with my youngest, I took 2 weeks of mat
Wow.
leave.
Oh my gosh.
I took 2 weeks, and even during that time, I was checking Slack because not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I was curious. Like I like what I do. And so it wasn't work, quote unquote, work for me to do that. And in order to continue to crank at a company that young, we had to have a full-time nanny. And so, I was working full-time, and this was during COVID. I had a COVID baby. So this was 2020, which in retrospect was actually like, a silver lining because before that we were in office.
Mm.
And when COVID happened in San Francisco, you couldn't be in office anymore. So we were fully remote. Many people didn't even know I was pregnant because they only knew me from the shoulders up on Zoom. Nobody knew that I was pregnant, which was actually great. I was selling to customers, nobody knew I was pregnant. I was talking to investors, nobody knew I was pregnant. And I didn't have to like drag my large self into the office. And then after, she arrived, I could pump anytime because we were working from home. And with my first daughter, it was not a work from home situation. And I took 3 months off and I went back to the office and I brought my pumping bag and we had to get the mother's room and the whole shebang. And that was miserable. That
Hmm.
was horrible, horrific, right? And so I was so grateful that everyone was working from home, everyone was remote, And having a caregiver in the house, I could pop out and see the baby, I could check on things, I could answer questions, but I could continue to work and focus on the company that I was building while having my daughter. And I'm really grateful for that time. And I think if COVID hadn't happened, or we hadn't been in San Francisco, which was so on lockdown, it would have been a much different story.
hmm So you said something interesting, that time when you were having to pump in the mother's room, and I was working at a TV station and we didn't have a mother's room. I had to pump in the bathroom. So yes, I know how horrible those times were. And then you're like, why isn't it producing more? I think the battery's low, all that. You're a CEO.
Yeah.
You control the direction of your company.
Yeah.
Knowing all those things that you faced, have you implemented policies that help women at your organization, like remote or hybrid? What happened after COVID? How did you, as the leader, respond knowing this? Or did you feel pressure from society or investors or your board or whoever that it had to go back to the way it was?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. For me, like at WorkWhile, we do offer obviously paid parental leave, and it's really a conversation with your manager, and you're welcome to take as much as it makes sense. We don't have like, oh, you have to come back at this day. But we're still a young, growing startup. So, we're not like a publicly traded 100,000 person organization, and every person matters. And so, it wasn't the case for me that I thought, oh, because I really hated my first experience of having to pump in the mother's room, that, I want to have everyone have, some sort of Nordic or Scandinavian parental leave policy. It didn't quite go in that direction because, when it was my choice, when it was up to me, I took 2 weeks. But like, that's because that's who I am, right? That's what drives me to be a founder CEO. I don't expect anyone else to do that at all. And now that we are back in office, we will certainly have a mother's room, and we certainly want to support anyone who has to pump at work. I mean, that just sucks. Like, there's no two ways around it. But I'd be like, we'll have the refrigerator in there. You bring all of your stuff, keep it in, like, we'll set it up. We haven't actually had anybody since we went back into the office need that yet. But I feel like I know what the right setup is, and they don't need to figure it out themselves.
hmm hmm And so this company, WorkWhile, that you co-founded, is helping people find hourly work, like you talked about, so many people did in Fresno that weren't in certain professions, but help them find it in ways that it's empowering, supportive for their families, and gives them flexibility, which is something so many people I think are craving, because that's why a lot of people are drawn to entrepreneurship, right? Because they know, boy, if I could just control my own schedule and do the pickups and drop offs myself and still give the company 110%, but in my own way. So explain if any of your experience as a woman, really influenced your decision to start this company and how it helps women in the ways that they're craving right now where they want to control their schedule.
Absolutely. I mean, I think being a parent, being a mom, I can't imagine having a job that didn't give me the ability to like pop out and deal with a kid thing. And for so many women, they don't have that luxury. 80 million Americans, more than half of our labor force, work frontline jobs, hourly jobs, everything from a warehouse associate to a line cook to a server. And if you work in a warehouse and you need to pop out and take a kid to urgent care or pick them up because the school called and they have an ear infection, you can't do that. And if you do that a few times, you're going to lose your job. You're going to get written up. You're going to get points, and certain number of points, that job is no longer yours. And I think that that is so underappreciated in our society, the cognitive load of that, of these women who are like, man, I am like one cold away from losing my livelihood. And I don't think that's right. And so our platform, WorkWhile, connects frontline workers with shifts. So they can opt into their own schedule. They don't have to work at a certain time. They don't have to work at a certain company. They're presented with a menu of options and they get to opt into the ones that they want to work. And so about 50%, we're 50-50 of the workers on our platform. We have 1.2 million workers on the platform. We're across 41 states. And we're 50-50 men, women. And we have a significant percentage of single parents. Now, men have the same problem. If you're a single dad, you have this issue too. It's not unique to women, but a lot of times women are the ones who are responsible for taking care of the children. And we hear from single moms who are like, this is such a lifesaver because I can be with my kids. I can take care of them. I can go to the school thing. And I don't have to worry about losing my job. And I can make the money that I need in a way that gives me autonomy over my own time. It does not belong to the company. If you have a traditional hourly job, like the company is giving you your schedule, and you might request, oh, I'd really like to work afternoons, or da, 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 da. There's no guarantee. They're under no obligation to accommodate your needs. And so it's a really revolutionary thing for the hourly wage earner to actually have the autonomy and the power to choose their own schedule. And that's something that we're incredibly proud of at WorkWhile. And being being a female CEO and someone who has worked in these corporate environments, I think as hard as these jobs are, we have a lot of privilege, right? If I need to go to the dentist, I can just go do that. I think a lot of us who work in the white collar world, we don't understand how little flexibility the rest of the country has.
Hmm. And so this is huge for, like you said, single parents, women who feel like they're the default parent. So is the structure a 1099 gig worker type of structure?
So we have W-2, which is an employee structure, and 1099 for certain roles, like a last mile delivery driver, right? If you want to deliver packages using your own vehicle, that's an example of a 1099 position.
So you have multiple different options.
That's right.
Okay. And where do you see the company going? You're in 41 states. You just had this huge Series B last year.
Mhm.
You're carrying a lot, on your shoulder. How, your company is growing. You've got your own team, and then you've got this growing, roster of workers all over the country, maybe even the world. Where are you going with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a high growth tech company, and we we do a lot with a little, and we leverage technology and now all the advancements in AI to be in service to the worker. We're a worker first company. That is the whole reason why we started. We want to be the best place to make a living working shift work through WorkWhile. And for us, we are firmly on that IPO trajectory of continuing to grow and really building a generational company, right? Like the hourly labor market, frontline labor is like 5 trillion of $13 trillion of US GDP. It is huge. This is not a small piece of the pie. And I get so worked up about it because I think so much of the talk about future of work is all about white collar workers. Oh, what's going to happen to software engineers now that AI is writing all the software? There's such a small slice of the pie. And don't get me wrong, I love software engineers. Like I'm surrounded by them. They're really important and amazing people. But what about the 80 million people who are working these frontline jobs? What can we do? How can we apply technology in service to them? And what does the future of work look like for them? And I think our traditional notions of one employee to one employer is getting blown up. I think the pandemic blew that up. People don't want to go back to that. People want to be in control of their own schedule and what they're doing with their time and their lives. And we're committed to building the platform that enables that.
Wow. And what responsibility do you feel as a woman to be a role model, to, strive and you get to that IPO and you're standing there, ringing the bell, knowing that girls are looking at that and young women in college and, what What do you do in that realm? Is that important to you that you're representing? I noticed that you said that you want to support female founders. So what are you doing in that realm that makes it be known that I am a female founder and because of that I care about XYZ?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing that you can do to support female founders is be really flippin' successful, right? Like, be the change that you want to see in the world, be a big success so that people say, oh, wow, she did it. I could do it. Investors say, oh, wow, they made a lot of money on that company. We should probably invest in more companies like that, started by people like that founder, right? You know, there's a lot of pattern matching that happens in the VC universe. So number one, I think the best thing that I could do for other women is be wildly successful. But beyond that, more tactically, you know, I do want to support other women who are trying to start their own businesses. And one of the ways that I tried to do that was to start an organization within my own universe. So I went to Wharton for business school. And even at Wharton, Stanford, and Harvard, the thing that pissed me off so much is that there's a company called PitchBook that does all of the VC investment tracking. And PitchBook has an annual university report of like which graduates from which companies are getting money and this and that and the other. And even though women and men, they go to the same schools, they have the same education. Women raise like 13% of all venture money that goes to Wharton founders. It's not 50-50. The school is now majority female. It's something like 55-45 women, men. But women are still not raising their fair share of venture capital. And that made me so mad because it was like we've controlled for that variable. We've controlled for education. We've controlled for like pedigree. And even when we do that, the women can't raise the same amount of money. And so we started the Wharton Alumni Founders and Funders Association that connects Wharton female founders with Wharton female funders because Wharton turns out a lot of investors. So why can't Wharton women invest in other Wharton women? And so now that organization, I'm still on the board, is now 5,000 members strong, and one of the most active Wharton alumni clubs. And I'm very proud for all the support and networking, education, and community we can provide to both Wharton founders and funders because being a female investor is not easy either. It's not like the funders are having a great easy go of it. There are very few women who are general partners in venture capital firms. Those are the ones who actually decide to write the checks. And they need our support as well.
Hmm. So you've been through so much, you've achieved so much. And like you said, that in and of itself is huge for other women to look at that and know that, and then that you're laying the groundwork. I want to know if you could go back to an earlier version of you, knowing then what you know now, what would you change?
I think what I would have said to my younger self was, you don't need permission. Because I think you know, I was a great student. I was very much okay. I take this class, I take the prereq, and then I take the next class, and then I get this grade, and then I do that, and then I go to this internship, and then I get that job, and then and I would go back to my younger self and be like, you don't need to do any of that. You could just do it. You could just start where you want to end up. Why don't you just focus on that? And I think a lot of women, especially, I think a lot of men too, especially, you know, high achieving type A women feel like they have to prove themselves incrementally and go up the ladder and do the thing. And, you know, we talk about the glass ceiling. You know, what if you like parachuted through the glass ceiling? Why didn't you go this way? Why didn't you come this way? And I think a lot of it is because we're told like this is what people do, this is what women do. And I would have told my younger self, you need to go to business school to start another company. You don't need to get to this level in corporate America to then take on, you know, a venture-backed CEO role. You don't need permission to do anything. You just need to do it.
Wow. And that's really surprising because when I looked at your LinkedIn, I was like, oh, I see this trajectory. I see how she had this great success because she went to this, well-known school and then she worked in these corporate roles. And that must have given her the skills. That must have given her, the connections that she needed. But you're literally saying that it may have given you the confidence, but it didn't necessarily give you the skills and the connections. Those you could have developed as you went along. You could have developed those as you were building the plane and while you were flying it. It wasn't like you had to have those skills to achieve the success. It was more that you were building up the confidence.
I think it was the confidence was the number one thing. And like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that going to Wharton was not beneficial to me. Like that was huge. That's huge. That's great. I'm not going to say that working at BCG, Boston Consulting Group didn't open doors. It absolutely did, right? But what I would tell my younger self is like, that's one path. You can do it that way. And that's the way I did it. And like each one of those things led to the next. And so it was all very important. Like the funny story is that like the reason why I ended up at BCG, big management consulting firm after business school was because someone in BCG recruiting saw Fresno on my resume and her fiance was from Fresno. And so that's what got me, a coffee chat, right? Turns out I knew him. And so then it was off to the races, right? So all these connections were beneficial and were important, but I really believe that, if I had wanted to do something before all of that, like that was not required. That's one path, but you can do it. And if you have a passion and you have the idea and you have the capability, there's no reason to put it on ice to go do this other thing that's a check. You don't need the check boxes. And I think when I was younger, I didn't believe that. I believed I really needed these check boxes.
Well, I thank you for sharing that with so many women out there. And if you were inspired by today's story, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you or anyone you know is struggling to find the right childcare, check out MomSub's free webinar that guides families through the steps to find and keep trusted, reliable childcare at momsub.com/webinar. That's MomSub, like a substitute mom. You can connect with MomSub on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Our mission is for you to discover what you want in life, pursue it with intensity like Jarah, reach out for help when needed, build that village, and fulfill your dreams. And that reduces your stress, your guilt, and your self-criticism along the way, and it increases your calm, confidence, and clarity. So remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. Keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.